I knew something was wrong the moment I saw Brenda standing on my freshly mowed lawn with her phone out, taking pictures of my porch like she was documenting a crime scene. My name is Ryan Edwards, and I had just finished the biggest restoration project of my life. The house I purchased 6 months ago in Wilmington, North Carolina, was a beautiful Victorian from 1887, and I had spent every weekend and most of my savings bringing the front porch back to its original glory. The previous owners had replaced the authentic columns with cheap hollow ones from a big box store sometime in the 1990s, and I had commissioned custom replicas based on the architect's original drawings that I found in the local historical society archives. "Can I help you?" I called out from my front door, already knowing this was about to be a problem. Brenda Patterson spun around, her perfectly highlighted blonde hair not moving an inch despite the humid coastal breeze. She was in her mid-50s, wearing a crisp white blouse and khaki capris, with her HOA president badge clipped prominently to her collar like she was mall security. "Mr. Edwards," she said in that tone that made my jaw clench, "I am conducting a routine inspection of the neighborhood, and I have noticed that you have made unauthorized modifications to your property." Unauthorized. I walked down my new steps, running my hand along the smooth, turned wood of the column. "These are exact replicas of the originals. I have the architect's plans from 1887 to prove it." "That may be," Brenda said, not even looking at the columns. "But according to Section 7, Paragraph 4 of our HOA covenants, any exterior modifications must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee before installation." "You did not submit any paperwork." I took a deep breath. "Brenda, I did submit paperwork. 3 months ago, I hand-delivered it to your mailbox because the HOA does not have an office." "I have no record of receiving any such documentation," she replied, tapping on her phone. "And furthermore, even if you had submitted it, these columns are not in keeping with the neighborhood aesthetic. They are too ornate." "Too ornate? This is a Victorian house. Victorian houses have ornate columns. These are historically accurate." Brenda finally looked up from her phone, her eyes narrowed. "Mr. Edwards, I understand you are new to Heritage Oaks, but we have standards here. These columns must be replaced with something more appropriate, or you will face daily fines of $200 until compliance is achieved." She turned and walked away before I could respond, her white sneakers squeaking against the walkway. I stood there, my hand still on the column that had cost me $3,000 to have custom made by a craftsman in Asheville who specialized in historical reproductions. Inside my house, I went straight to my office and pulled out the file I had labeled HOA. Inside was a copy of the architectural review form I had filled out, complete with photos, measurements, and historical documentation. I had taken a picture of it in Brenda's mailbox with my phone, and I pulled up the image, dated exactly 92 days ago. My neighbor, Tom, was in his yard when I walked back outside. He was a retired contractor in his 70s who had lived in Heritage Oaks for 20 years. "Let me guess," Tom said, gesturing toward his own house. "Brenda, she says my columns are not appropriate." Tom laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "She tried to make me replace my roof last year, said the shingles were the wrong shade of gray. I showed her they were the exact shade specified in the HOA documents, and she said the documents must be wrong." "What did you do?" I ignored her. "Eventually, she moved on to someone else. That is Brenda's way. She picks a target, harasses them for a few months, then gets bored and finds a new victim." "I cannot afford $200 a day in fines," I said. "She cannot actually enforce those fines unless the HOA board votes on it." "Last time I checked, 3 of the 5 board members cannot stand her. Just show up to the next meeting with your paperwork. The next HOA meeting was not for 3 weeks, according to the schedule posted on the neighborhood's barely functional website. 3 weeks at $200 a day would be over $4,000, even if they waived the fines after I proved my case. I called the number listed for the HOA management company. A bored-sounding woman named Jennifer answered on the 5th ring. Heritage Oaks, HOA, how can I help you? Hi, my name is Ryan Edwards. I live at 412 Magnolia Drive, and I have received notice of fines for my porch columns, but I submitted all the proper paperwork months ago. Let me pull up your account, I heard typing. Okay, Mr. Edwards. I show here that you have an outstanding violation for unauthorized architectural modifications. Right, but I did submit the review form. I have proof. Do you have a receipt showing that the HOA received and processed your form? I put it in the president's mailbox. She said to do that. More typing. Our records show no such submission. Without proof of receipt, I cannot help you. You will need to address this at the next board meeting. The next meeting is in 3 weeks. Yes, sir. And I am being fined $200 a day starting now. That is what the notice says, yes. I hung up before I said something I would regret. This was insane. I had followed every rule, documented everything, and now I was being penalized because Brenda either lost my paperwork or was lying about receiving it. That evening, I did what any reasonable person in 2025 would do. I posted about it on the neighborhood Facebook group. Has anyone else had issues with HOA paperwork going missing? I wrote, keeping it neutral. I submitted architectural review forms 3 months ago, and now am being told they were never received. Within an hour, I had 37 comments. Most were from other homeowners sharing similar stories. One woman said she had submitted a form to paint her shutters and had to submit it 4 times before it was acknowledged. Another man said Brenda had tried to fine him for parking his truck in his own driveway overnight, claiming it was a commercial vehicle, when it was just a standard pickup he used for weekend projects. Then Deborah Williams commented. She was on the HOA board, one of the members Tom had mentioned who did not like Brenda. Ryan, please email me copies of all your documentation. My address is on the HOA website under board members. I would like to review this before the meeting. I sent her everything that night. The photos, the historical documents from the Wilmington Historical Society, the architect's original plans from 1887, and the picture of my submission form in Brenda's mailbox, complete with the timestamp. Deborah called me the next morning. This is absolutely ridiculous, she said without preamble. Your columns are beautiful and historically accurate. I drive past your house on my way to work and have been meaning to tell you what a wonderful job you did with the restoration. Thank you. So what happens now? I am calling an emergency board meeting for this Thursday evening. Brenda cannot issue fines without a board vote anyway, so this whole thing is improper. Can you attend? Absolutely. Bring everything. Print out hard copies. Brenda likes to claim that technology fails and emails get lost, so have physical proof of everything. Thursday evening, I walked into Tom's house, which was apparently where the board meetings were held because the HOA was too cheap to rent space anywhere. The living room was set up with folding chairs, and 5 people sat behind a folding table. Brenda was in the center, looking like she had been interrupted during something important. Deborah was on the far left, wearing jeans and a sweater, her gray hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like someone's friendly grandmother. Next to her was Marcus, a black man in his 40s who worked as an accountant. Then Brenda, then Patricia, a nervous-looking woman in her 60s, and finally Gary, who was probably 80 and seemed confused about why he was there. About 15 other homeowners sat in the folding chairs, apparently curious about what was happening. Tom gave me a thumbs up from the back row. "This emergency meeting of the Heritage Oaks HOA board will come to order," Deborah said. "We are here to address the violation notice issued to Ryan Edwards regarding his porch columns. Ryan, would you like to present your case?" I stood up, my folder in hand. "Thank you. 6 months ago, I purchased the house at 412 Magnolia Drive, which is a Victorian home built in 1887. The porch columns had been replaced at some point with modern, historically inaccurate columns. I found the original architect's plans at the Historical Society and had custom columns made to match the originals exactly. I passed copies of the architect's drawings around. As you can see, these drawings show the exact specifications for the columns, including the ornamental details. I submitted an architectural review form 3 months ago, placing it in President Patterson's mailbox as instructed." Brenda interrupted. "I never received any such form." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the small projector that Deborah had set up. The image of my paperwork in Brenda's mailbox appeared on her white living room wall, the timestamp clearly visible. "This photo shows the form in your mailbox on February 15th at 3:47 p.m. I took it as a precaution because I had heard that paperwork sometimes went missing." The room got very quiet. Brenda's face turned red. "That does not prove I received it. Perhaps it blew away." "So you are saying I should have used certified mail instead of following your instructions to use your mailbox?" Marcus leaned forward. "Brenda, you told all the homeowners to use your mailbox for submissions. You said it was easier than the management company's process." "I must have overlooked it," Brenda said stiffly. Deborah looked at the documents I had provided. "Even if there was a paperwork issue, these columns are clearly historically appropriate. The house is on the local historical registry, is it not?" "It is," I confirmed. "Which is why I was so careful to get everything right." Patricia spoke up for the first time, her voice shaky. "I think they look lovely, much better than those old ones." Gary nodded. "What are we talking about again?" "Ryan's columns," Deborah said patiently. "All in favor of rescinding the violation notice." 4 hands went up, only Brenda abstained. "Motion passes." "Ryan, there will be no fines. Your columns are approved. I apologize for this waste of your time." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I received a certified letter. Inside was a notice that the HOA was placing a lien on my property for unpaid fines totaling $1,200, covering the 6 days between when Brenda issued her notice and when the board meeting overturned it. I called Deborah immediately. "Did you see this? I just got off the phone with Marcus. None of us authorized this. Brenda must have filed it herself." "Can she do that?" "No, she absolutely cannot. This is going to require a lawyer, Ryan. I am so sorry." I hired an attorney named Robert Chen who specialized in HOA disputes. His office was in downtown Wilmington, in a historic building that probably had a more functional HOA than mine. "This is highly irregular," Robert said after reviewing my documents. "The president of an HOA does not have unilateral authority to place liens. That requires a board vote and proper notice. We can get this removed, but I want to dig deeper into the HOA's finances and operations. Something feels off here." "What do you mean?" "In my experience, when an HOA president acts this aggressively and outside their authority, there is usually a reason. They are either on a power trip, which is common, or they are trying to distract from something else." Robert filed a motion to remove the lien, and sent a formal letter to the HOA management company demanding a full accounting of Heritage Oak's finances for the past 3 years. The management company was legally required to provide this to any homeowner who requested it. While we waited for the financial documents, Brenda escalated. I came home from work one afternoon to find a bright orange sticker on my front door declaring my house a safety hazard due to structurally unsound porch columns. It was the kind of sticker the city building inspector used for condemned properties. I called the building inspector's office. "Hi, someone put a condemnation notice on my door, but I did not receive any inspection notice." "What's your address?" the man asked. I told him. "We do not have any record of an inspection at that address. Someone put a fake sticker on your door. You should file a police report." So I did. Officer Mike Rodriguez came out that evening, took photos of the sticker, and wrote up a report. "This is a violation of several city codes," he said. "Impersonating a city official, posting false government notices. Do you know who might have done this?" "I have a pretty good idea." I told him about Brenda and the HOA dispute. He nodded slowly. "We have had a few calls about that HOA president. Nothing we could act on before, but this is different. We will follow up." The next morning, the financial documents arrived at Robert's office. He called me immediately. "Ryan, can you come down here? I need to show you something." In his office, Robert had papers spread across his conference table. "Look at this. The HOA's operating account should have about $47,000 based on the dues everyone pays. According to this statement, it has $8,000. Where did the money go? That is the question. There are dozens of payments to something called Heritage Property Services. $1,500 here, $2,000 there, sometimes 3 payments in 1 month. Is that a vendor?" Robert did a quick search on his computer. "Heritage Property Services is registered to a Brenda Patterson." My stomach dropped. "She is stealing from the HOA. It looks that way. I am going to need to bring this to the other board members immediately." That evening, Deborah, Marcus, and Patricia met with Robert and me at his office. Gary was invited but said he was busy with a card game. When Robert showed them the financials, Patricia started crying. "I signed off on payments," she said. "I am the treasurer. Brenda told me these were for landscaping and pool maintenance." "The HOA does not have a pool," Marcus said flatly. "She said it was a shared facility with the neighboring community." "There is no neighboring community sharing arrangement." Marcus looked angry now. "How long has this been going on?" Robert pulled up more statements. "Based on these records, about 4 years. Roughly $70,000 total." "Oh my God," Deborah said. "We need to call the police." "I would recommend that," Robert agreed. "This is embezzlement. This is also why she has been so aggressive with violation notices lately. She needed the HOA to look busy and legitimate while she siphoned money." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I am calling right now." Detective Sarah Morrison was assigned to the case. She was a serious woman in her early 40s who looked at the financial documents with the practiced eye of someone who had seen this before. "HOA embezzlement is more common than people think," she said. "The oversight is minimal, and board members are usually volunteers who do not have time to audit everything carefully. Miss Patterson chose her victims well." Over the next week, Detective Morrison interviewed all the board members, reviewed 5 years of financial records, and executed a search warrant on Brenda's house. I heard about the search warrant from Tom, who watched the whole thing from his porch. 3 officers and someone from the white-collar crime unit, Tom said, clearly thrilled with the drama. They carried out boxes of documents. Brenda was screaming about harassment and how this was all your fault for making a big deal about some stupid columns. My columns are not stupid, I said. I know that. They look great. The detective called me a few days later. Mr. Edwards, I wanted to let you know that we have arrested Brenda Patterson for embezzlement and fraud. We found evidence of over $90,000 in stolen HOA funds going back 6 years. She was also billing the HOA for services from 3 other fake companies. 90,000. She got greedy. Started small, then increased the amounts when no one noticed. Your column dispute was actually fortunate timing. If she had not drawn attention to herself by harassing you and filing that fraudulent lien, this might have gone on for years more. What happens now? She has been charged with multiple counts of embezzlement, fraud, and filing a false instrument. That last one is for the fake lien she placed on your property. With the amount of money involved and the duration of the scheme, she is looking at significant prison time if convicted. The story hit the local news 2 days later. Wilmington is not a huge city, and HOA president arrested for embezzlement made for good television. A reporter named Jessica actually came to my house to interview me about the columns that started it all. So you just wanted to restore your historic home correctly? She asked, her cameraman filming my porch. That was the entire goal. I love this house. I love this neighborhood. I wanted to honor the original craftsmanship. And instead, you uncovered a major fraud scheme. That was not exactly my plan. The story aired that evening. By the next morning, I had 3 neighbors I barely knew stopping by to thank me. One brought cookies. Another offered to help if I ever needed yard work done. The third asked if I would consider running for HOA president. Absolutely not, I said, but Deborah called me that afternoon with the same question. Ryan, we need someone to help rebuild trust in the board. The homeowners respect what you did. You stood up to Brenda when a lot of people were too intimidated. I just wanted to keep my columns. Exactly. You are not looking for drama or power. That is exactly the kind of person we need. Can I think about it? Of course. The election is not until next month anyway. I talked to Tom about it that evening over beers on his porch. His columns were original to his 1920s bungalow, simple square posts that suited the architectural style perfectly. You should do it, Tom said. This neighborhood needs someone who actually cares about the houses, not someone on a power trip. I do not know anything about running an HOA. Neither did Brenda, and she managed to steal 90 grand. You will be fine. The next few weeks were busy. Robert helped me get the fraudulent lien removed from my property. The title company confirmed it would not affect any future sale or refinancing. The HOA had to hire a forensic accountant to fully document Brenda's theft for the insurance claim and the criminal case. Brenda pleaded not guilty initially, but when the prosecutor showed her attorney the evidence, which included her own handwritten notes detailing the fake invoices, she changed her plea. The hearing was in the new Hanover County Courthouse in late April. I attended with Deborah and Marcus. We sat in the gallery as Brenda stood before the judge, wearing a navy suit that was probably meant to make her look respectable. Her attorney argued for probation, claiming she had no prior record and had been under financial stress. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Torres, presented the evidence methodically. Your Honor, Miss Patterson did not steal out of desperation. She stole consistently and deliberately for 6 years, creating multiple shell companies and forging documents. She targeted her own neighbors, people who trusted her. And when one homeowner began asking questions, she retaliated by filing false liens and fake government notices. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a sustained criminal enterprise. The judge looked tired. Miss Patterson, you were in a position of trust. You betrayed that trust repeatedly. While I acknowledge your lack of prior criminal history, the duration and sophistication of this scheme cannot be overlooked. I am sentencing you to 3 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You will also be required to pay full restitution to the Heritage Oaks HOA in the amount of $93,412. Brenda started crying. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off angrily. As they led her out of the courtroom, she looked directly at me. The hatred in her eyes was palpable. "Well, that is done," Marcus said as we walked out into the spring sunshine. "Now we just have to figure out how to run an HOA without a criminal at the helm." The election happened in May. I did not really campaign. I just showed up to the meeting and said I would do my best to be fair and transparent. There were 2 other candidates. One was a guy who seemed mostly interested in banning basketball hoops because they looked unsightly. The other was a woman who wanted to paint all the houses in the neighborhood the same shade of beige for uniformity. I won with 62% of the vote. My first act as president was to establish clear procedures for architectural review submissions. Everything would be submitted through email with automatic confirmation receipts. All submissions would be reviewed within 30 days. Denials would require written justification based on specific HOA rules, not personal preference. My second act was to hire a real accountant to manage the HOA finances and require 2 board members to sign off on any payment over $500. My third act was to organize a neighborhood meeting about architectural guidelines. I invited a local historian who specialized in historic preservation to speak about the importance of maintaining the character of older homes while allowing homeowners reasonable freedom. The goal should not be rigid uniformity, the historian explained. It should be harmony. A 1920s bungalow should look like a 1920s bungalow. A Victorian should look like a Victorian. But a historically appropriate red door on one house and a historically appropriate blue door on another is not a problem. We revised the architectural guidelines over 3 meetings, with input from dozens of homeowners. The new rules were specific but reasonable. They protected the historic character of the neighborhood without giving any future president the authority to reject things based on personal taste. In June, I was in my front yard watering the flowers I had planted along the porch when a car slowed down in front of my house. The passenger window rolled down and an older woman leaned out. "Excuse me, are those the famous columns?" I laughed. "I do not know about famous, but yes, these are the ones. They are beautiful. We are thinking about buying a house in this neighborhood and wanted to see what the HOA was really like. The real estate agent told us the whole story. Well, the HOA is under new management now. We try to be reasonable. That is good to hear. This seems like a wonderful neighborhood." They bought a house 3 streets over, a 1905 colonial that needed significant work. When they submitted their architectural review for new windows that matched the historical specifications, I approved it within 2 days. Summer passed. The insurance company reimbursed the HOA for most of the stolen money after their investigation confirmed the fraud. We used some of it to replace the neighborhood entrance sign, which had been falling apart for years. We put the rest in a properly managed reserve fund for future repairs. In August, I got a letter from the Department of Corrections. Brenda had filed a complaint claiming I had conspired to frame her for embezzlement because of a personal grudge. An investigator was assigned to review the claim. Robert laughed when I showed him the letter. "This is standard. She is desperate and trying anything. Forward them to me. I will provide them with all the documentation showing that law enforcement and forensic accountants independently verified the embezzlement. Her claim will go nowhere. He was right. 2 weeks later, I received a letter stating the investigation found no merit to the complaint. Fall arrived and the neighborhood looked beautiful. The trees along Magnolia Drive turned red and gold. Someone organized a Halloween decoration contest, which my house won because I hung period-appropriate lanterns on my porch. The prize was a gift card to a local restaurant. In October, I was replacing a loose board on my porch steps when a process server approached me. My heart sank. Now what? But the papers were not for me. They were addressed to the Heritage Oaks HOA. Brenda was suing from prison, claiming the HOA had violated her rights by not providing proper oversight of her actions as president, which she argued created an environment where she felt pressured to take the money. Robert was less amused this time. This is a nuisance suit, but we have to respond to it. She is basically arguing that because no one was watching her closely enough, it is the HOA's fault she stole. It is absurd, but it will cost time and money to dismiss. The HOA's insurance provided an attorney to defend against the suit. The case took 6 months to wind through the system before a judge finally dismissed it with prejudice, meaning Brenda could not refile. The judge's written opinion included the phrase frivolous and without merit, which Robert had framed and jokingly offered to hang in the HOA office if we ever got one. Meanwhile, life in Heritage Oaks improved. Without the constant threat of arbitrary violations and fines, people started taking better care of their properties. 3 more families began historic restoration projects. The neighborhood organized a spring garden tour showcasing the beautiful yards and historic architecture. I stepped down as HOA president after 1 year, having done what I set out to do. Deborah took over, and I stayed on the board as the Architectural Review Committee chair. It was a role I actually enjoyed, helping homeowners navigate historically appropriate renovations and connecting them with craftspeople who specialized in period work. 2 years after the column incident, a national news outlet did a story on HOA fraud and interviewed me about what happened in Heritage Oaks. The reporter asked if I regretted buying a house in an HOA community. No, I said, standing on my porch with the afternoon sun illuminating the columns. I love my house. I love this neighborhood. What happened with Brenda was unfortunate, but it was not about the HOA system itself. It was about one person who abused power and trust. We fixed the problems she created, and now we have an HOA that actually serves the homeowners instead of harassing them. What advice would you give to other homeowners dealing with difficult HOAs? Document everything. Know your rights. Read your HOA documents carefully. And do not be afraid to push back when something is wrong. If I had just given up and replaced my columns, Brenda would probably still be stealing money today. The story aired in March. I got calls from homeowners across the country dealing with their own HOA nightmares. I tried to help where I could, mostly by recommending they talk to attorneys like Robert who specialized in HOA law. One caller was from Arizona, where her HOA was trying to fine her for having a solar panel installation that was protected by state law. I connected her with a lawyer Robert knew in Phoenix, and they successfully fought the fines. Another caller was from Florida, where his HOA was demanding he remove a wheelchair ramp because it was not aesthetically pleasing. That one made me angry. I helped him file a complaint with HUD for disability discrimination, and the HOA backed down immediately when they realized federal law superseded their architectural guidelines. In April, I received an invitation to speak at a conference on historic preservation in Raleigh. The topic was navigating HOAs and preservation regulations. I almost declined because public speaking was not really my thing, but Robert convinced me to do it. "You have a good story to tell," he said, "and a lot of people trying to do the right thing with historic properties need to hear it." The conference was full of architects, historians, and homeowners passionate about preservation. My talk was in a room that held about 100 people, and it was standing room only. I told the story of my columns, the HOA battle, and the fraud we uncovered. Then I spent 40 minutes answering questions. "How did you stay motivated when the HOA kept fighting you?" one woman asked. "Honestly, I just loved my house too much to let someone bully me into ruining it. These columns were part of the original design. Taking them down would have been like painting over a historic mural. I could not do it." "What would you do differently?" I thought about that. "I would have insisted on certified mail for every submission, regardless of what the HOA president said. And I would have gotten other homeowners involved earlier. I thought this was just my problem, but it turned out a lot of people were frustrated with how things were being run. We could have addressed it sooner if we had talked to each other." After the talk, a man in his 60s approached me. "I am an architect in Charleston," he said. "I work on a lot of historic renovations, and HOAs are consistently my biggest headache. Thank you for fighting the good fight." "Thank you for designing things worth fighting for," I replied. Summer came again. 3 years had passed since I bought my house. The columns had weathered beautifully, developing a rich patina that made them look like they had been there since 1887. My garden was mature now, full of period-appropriate plants that a botanist helped me select. Tom and I sat on my porch on a warm June evening, drinking iced tea and watching neighbors walk by with their dogs. "You know, I was wrong," Tom said. "About what?" "When you first moved in, I thought you were crazy for spending all that money on fancy columns. I figured you should just keep your head down and avoid trouble with Brenda. But you did the right thing. The house looks amazing and the whole neighborhood is better because you did not back down." "I just wanted my columns," I said, which had become my standard response to this kind of comment. "Sure," Tom said, not believing me for a second. "Just the columns." In July, I got a letter from Brenda's attorney. She was up for parole review and wanted to submit character references from Heritage Oaks residents. The letter asked if I would be willing to provide a statement. I showed it to Robert, who actually laughed out loud. "The audacity is impressive. What are you going to do? Ignore it. She targeted me specifically, tried to extort money through fraudulent fines, and filed fake government notices on my property. Why would I help her get out early? Some people would take the high road. Some people did not have orange stickers declaring their house condemned stuck to their front door." Robert grinned. "Fair point. Brenda's parole was denied. According to news reports, she had been written up multiple times in prison for disciplinary issues and showed no remorse for her actions. She would serve her full sentence. In August, the neighborhood had a block party to celebrate Heritage Oaks' 75th anniversary. Someone had dug up old photos of the neighborhood from the 1950s and 1960s, and we set up a display showing how things had changed over the decades. My house was in several of the photos. In a 1962 image, you could clearly see the original columns on the porch. I had the photo enlarged and framed it next to the architect's drawings in my hallway. It was satisfying to see how perfectly my replicas matched the originals. A reporter from the Wilmington Star News came to the block party and did a story on the neighborhood's history. She interviewed several longtime residents, including Tom, who told stories about the various characters who had lived in Heritage Oaks over the years. "Of course, the most exciting thing to happen recently was when Ryan uncovered the embezzlement," Tom said, clearly enjoying himself. All because of some porch columns. They are not just some porch columns, I called over from the grill where I was cooking burgers. They are architecturally significant porch columns. Everyone laughed. It had become a running joke in the neighborhood. That fall, I started dating someone I met at a historic preservation fundraiser. Her name was Diana Wright, and she was a museum curator specializing in decorative arts. She appreciated the columns immediately. "These are exceptional reproductions," she said the first time she visited my house. "Who did the work?" "A craftsman in Asheville named Robert Morrison. He specializes in 19th century woodwork. I am working on a project at the museum where we need to recreate some missing architectural elements. Can I get his contact information?" I connected them, and Robert ended up doing several pieces for the museum's New American Wing. He sent me a thank you note and a bottle of bourbon. Diana and I got serious quickly. By Christmas, she was spending most weekends at my house. She loved the neighborhood and started helping with HOA events. She had a natural talent for organization and diplomacy, and Deborah tried to recruit her for the board. "One HOA president in the relationship is enough," Deanna said, laughing. "I am not the president anymore," I reminded her. "You are still on the board. That counts." In January, Deanna moved in officially. She worked from home 2 days a week, and she set up her office in the room I had been using for storage. We painted it a historically appropriate sage green and found a Victorian-era desk at an estate sale. One afternoon in February, I came home to find Deanna on the porch with a tape measure and a notepad. "What are you doing?" "I want to put window boxes on the upstairs windows. I found some photos from the Historical Society showing that houses like this often had them. But I need to make sure they will be proportional." "Are you going to submit an architectural review form?" I asked, teasing. "I am sleeping with the chair of the Architectural Review Committee. I think I have an in." We installed the window boxes in March. They were simple wooden boxes painted white to match the porch trim, filled with flowers that would have been popular in the Victorian era. They looked perfect. That spring, a production company contacted me about being featured in a documentary series about historic home restoration and the challenges homeowners faced. I was skeptical at first, worried it would be sensationalized, but the producer convinced me they were trying to do something thoughtful. They filmed over 3 days in April. Cameras followed me around the house as I talked about the restoration work, the research process, and yes, the column incident. They interviewed Deborah, Tom, and Robert about what had happened with the HOA. "The thing about Ryan," Deborah said to the camera, "is that he never wanted attention or drama. He just wanted to do right by his house. But when someone tried to stop him from doing that, he stood his ground. That takes courage." The documentary aired in August on a streaming service. It was part of a 6-episode series about homeowners fighting to preserve historic properties against various obstacles. My episode was called "The Columns of Heritage Oaks." The response was overwhelming. My phone rang constantly with interview requests. The story was picked up by architecture blogs, historic preservation organizations, and even a few news outlets that specialized in HOA horror stories. The attention was nice, but mostly I was just happy that the story was out there. If it helped even one person stand up to an unreasonable HOA, or inspired someone to research the history of their home before making changes, it was worth it. In October, 5 years after I first bought the house, Diana and I got married. We had the ceremony in our backyard, under an oak tree that had been there since before the house was built. The reception was on the front porch, with the columns decorated with flowers. Tom officiated. He had gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion. "I have known Ryan for 5 years now," he said during the ceremony. "And in that time, I have watched him restore this beautiful house, stand up to corruption, and build a life worth living. Deanna, you are getting a good man, one who knows what matters and is willing to fight for it. Plus, he has really nice columns," Deanna added, making everyone laugh. "We honeymooned in Charleston, staying in a bed and breakfast in a restored Victorian that reminded us of home. We spent our days walking through historic neighborhoods, taking photos of architectural details, and talking to other homeowners about their restoration projects. When we got back to Wilmington, there was a letter waiting from the State Historic Preservation Office. Our house had been officially added to the National Register of Historic Places based on its architectural significance and the quality of the restoration work. "We did it," Deanna said, reading the letter. "The house is protected now. The columns are safe," I agreed. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. I kept working my regular job as a civil engineer. Deanna continued her work at the museum. We hosted board game nights with neighbors, worked in the garden, and slowly continued the restoration work on the house. The bathroom needed work, and we found original fixtures at a salvage yard in Durham. The kitchen was next, and we were planning to restore it to a layout more typical of the period, while incorporating modern appliances hidden behind period-appropriate cabinetry. In December, 6 years after the column incident, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Ryan Edwards?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. My name is Catherine Patterson. I am Brenda Patterson's sister. I wanted to apologize to you for what my sister put you through." I was silent for a moment, surprised. "That is not necessary." "It is. Brenda was always difficult, always had to be in control of everything, but what she did to you and your neighbors was wrong. I have been trying to get her to see that, to genuinely apologize, but she refuses, so I wanted to at least reach out myself." "I appreciate that," I said, and I meant it. "How is she doing?" "She gets out in a few months. She has a job lined up at a warehouse, somewhere she cannot get access to other people's money. I am hoping she has learned something, but honestly, I do not know. She still blames everyone but herself." "I hope she figures it out," I said. "For her sake, thank you for being gracious. Most people in your position would not be." After we hung up, I told Deanna about the call. "You think she has really changed?" Deanna asked. "No," I said honestly, "but maybe eventually she will. People can change if they want to badly enough. You are a better person than I am. You married someone who spent months fighting over porch columns. Your judgment is questionable." She threw a pillow at me. As winter settled in, I found myself on the porch one evening, despite the cold. The columns were solid under my hand, exactly as they should be. The house looked the way it was meant to look, the way the architect had envisioned in 1887. Was it worth it? The stress, the legal fees, the time, the confrontation. I looked at the warm light spilling out through the windows, at the careful restoration work visible in every detail, at the house that Deanna and I were building our life in. I thought about the other homeowners who had been inspired to restore their own properties, about the improved HOA that actually served the community, about the fraud that had been stopped. Yeah, it was worth it. The columns stood firm, as they had for over a century, as they would for centuries more if I had anything to say about it. They were not just wood and architectural details. They were a statement about doing things right, about honoring the past, about standing up when something mattered. They were just columns, but they were also everything.